Hey, what's up, guys? Coming to you live from Dallas, Texas. We are the Random Jam Podcast, episode 8. My name is Lane Mitchell, and with me, as always, is the Reese McKinney.
Hey.
And we are going to come at you with all the latest music, television, entertainment, comics, you name it, we're going to say it.
So today is an awesome episode because we have our old friend, Hunter Liles, with us today. How are you doing, Hunter?
I'm good, guys. How are y'all?
Doing the best I can. Living my best life, huh?
Right.
Is that how they say it?
I get.
You know, who knows what they say anymore nowadays?
Right. So, Hunter, first of all, we're glad you could make it to the show today. We're glad that you're here. Tell those who are watching today what it is you do, a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Okay. Well, as I've been introduced, I want to say, first of all, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. I've been really looking forward to this. My name's Hunter Liles. I go way back with both Reese and Lane. We used to be in a band a long time ago together, but enough about that. I'm actually a educator. I'm a teacher at Tatum Middle School. I've been teaching. This will be the end of my 4th year. I'm also a coach as well, a varsity football coach and a head coach of the Tatum soccer team. I have a wonderful wife named Emma who's going to college right now to become a licensed practicing counselor. And I have a 15-month-old son named Sidney. I mean, outside of those things, I like to collect stamps and go on long walks. Not really, but those things are cool too.
I thought you were about to set up your dating profile. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, eHarmony.
The time capsule.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Amazing guitarist and musician. We got to play music together for many, many years. And yeah. So, Hunter, so you mentioned you were a teacher. And so and this is the question we've been asking everybody on this show because we feel it's a big deal. And kind of why we, formed this podcast was to kind of see what has it been like this last year with the quarantine and the pandemic? What has life been for you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as a public educator, it's been a crazy, we all went through the closing down of the world in March of last year. And we went completely virtual with kids. I mean, meeting exactly like we are now. It was a struggle at first, and we had the entire summer to kind of get things together, trying to keep things through the CDC guidelines, through TEA guidelines. I mean, we started 2-a-days with football. It was crazy. I mean, kids, we couldn't let them drink water without a coach being the one who sprayed it for them. We had to sanitize down everything all the time, wearing masks, even like for me. I have a beard, so I mean, I'm sweating. It's 150 degrees it feels like out, and I've got this neck gaiter pulled up all the way up there, and kids are doing it too. They're in their football pads and they have the N95 masks, and it was crazy. Even at a certain point where we took exposures so seriously that one of the kids that we had on the sideline of a game caught it, and we had to shut the entire program down for 2 weeks in the middle of our season. All coaches, all kids, anybody on that sideline that night, 2 weeks at home. Wow. It was absolutely.
So he didn't even catch a football. He caught COVID.
Yeah.
I was like, son, if you could catch a football because he caught COVID.
It was, yeah. And it was insane because it was just like that. We're gone. And even after the year went on and, we started 2021 and I'm coaching soccer now. I had a team who went to my tournament and one of their players caught COVID, and I had to sit down and watch 80 minutes of our game. And every time that kid touched one of my kids, even if it was for a split second, I had to send that kid home for 2 weeks because that's how intense the contact tracing has been.
Yeah.
And that's just sports. I mean, every day was tough. Fighting the mask battle with kids, trying to make sure that, they're keeping their distance, but they're also getting the education they need, wiping down desks after every single class. It was taxing. And I know, y'all can relate because we all have somebody we know and we love in the field. It's this year, I feel like it should add 2 or 3 years to our retirement funds because it was. I'm telling you,
basically, like, and from what my wife was telling me through all this time of what we've experienced here, like teachers were basically on the front lines in an extent, just as much as like nurses. And I mean, I know they're not like deep in it like they are, but like they were basically a part of this big category that we had of essential workers that were basically frontline people, combating the virus in different ways. But being a teacher, I can't imagine, especially the threat being the kids, but then like, just like you were saying, the contact tracing being such a big deal, and having to just go about each day and try to manage.
I mean, it really was one of the hardest times. I haven't fallen into the category of, oh, middle school is so tough. I don't know how anyone does it. I love it. I think it's awesome. But this year really just grinds you down. And I mean, it's gotten a lot better. Tatum still has the mask policy, but it's been pretty relaxed. I mean, we basically follow TEA guidelines, but we also follow Governor Abbott. Yeah, hey, we can't mandate masks past June 4th for us because that's part of our school policy. Now, obviously, last Friday it's gone for everybody else or mandate.
Right.
So it's been a struggle, but it's also been rewarding because the kids that are there are, for the most part, they're not taking it for granted like we did last year and then it ended. And my seniors didn't have a prom, a graduation. They didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And so even seventh graders are taking it seriously. And that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So like besides, which we can get more into in a little bit, but besides the work aspect of the quarantine, what was the home life and kind of like the day-to-day? Because we've talked about it between me and Lane and how that has kind of been, and then some of the other guests, but like what was the home life been like? And then what were some things that came out of the quarantine that you were like, well, this is an interesting change, good or bad?
Well, and I mean, I had a specific and definitely not the rule to what happened. I had a kid. My son born March 5th, and the world shut down 6 days later.
Congrats.
So,
yeah.
I was very fortunate when it happened because, the next week I wouldn't have even been allowed in the room. Like for my son, I would have had to. And so I got something that most people don't get. I actually got a paternity leave. It actually seems like I had 6 months of getting to be with my son every single day. And it was, I don't want to lessen the loss people have, but it was a blessing for me and my family. Me and my wife grew very close together. We started a podcast. We've done other things. She's started her own personal business, and I'll talk about all that later. But for me, I didn't really get the cabin fever. I didn't really get all that. I was free to not be coached all the time, gone 24/7. It was awesome. I mean, of course, when April rolled around and I'm sitting here watching the Chernobyl series, I'm like, oh. And so it was incredible. I caught up on a lot of things. It was great for my mental health, which is a shocking thing for a lot of people because it wasn't for them. So
right. Yeah. Some people it was literally the opposite.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm already mental enough, and this does not help. So. No, but fittingly, I watched The Last Man on Earth, that show with Will Forte, because my boss is like, I think you're a lot like him. And I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of am. And I feel like that might be what's actually going on in my life right now because it
definitely felt like that towards the beginning. Like it's so weird how like the information evolved and like how people reacted to it, especially at the beginning. It's like, people wearing like gloves and masks and eyewear and just like a whole 9 yards at the beginning. And it just felt so apocalyptic. I mean, even all like the buying of the toilet paper, that whole thing, like it's wild to think that happened a year ago, and then it was that like the hysteria was that high to where where we are now. Looking back, it's just like, man, why?
To chime in on that, what was really incredible about it was my wife bought us a bidet. It was
Well, that was a smart investment.
oh, this is amazing. I mean, we still use toilet paper, but we didn't have to use as much.
Well, that definitely saved you there.
Yeah.
Saved my butt.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, you know, Danielle and I came back from that cruise literally right when all the toilet paper stuff was happening. And we were just like, we legit need something. We're like, what is actually happening? Like,
Yeah, they didn't even know what was going on.
I feel like we had to go down a dark alley to get, you know, a roll of toilet paper for $15, and we're like, well, what is this? Is this the new black market? Like, what's going on?
I need.
I know you need it. Here it is. I was like, oh, because I don't get the whole toilet paper thing, but I guess I'll get it when it runs out, right?
Right.
So that's kind of what happened.
So, so with our last little icebreaker question here, back to kind of the teaching of it all. How do you feel about how COVID changed, you know, education, you know, in a lot of ways permanently, but then like how it changed it, and then how do you feel like things are going to head post COVID, you know, in the industry as a whole, and as well as your experience?
I definitely see a lot of the same protocols lasting a long time. Obviously not the mask, the sanitation things, that all the procedures of getting clean. I mean, think about the numbers of flu.
Yeah.
It was my son's doctor told me that he prescribed one Tamiflu since the outbreak. And this was at my son's year. So it was a year into the outbreak that all this happened. And so it's going to keep, I think a lot of the policies of cleaning and a little bit of distancing is going to stay in the schools, or at least we're going to mandate it, because it kept kids in school and it kept them from mostly having to miss for all those reasons medically. Yeah. Now, beyond that, as I said, we just got done with the STAR test, which when we were in high school was the tax test.
Oh, yeah. It was taxing. Sure.
For real. Definitely. We didn't have a test last year. And so it's a miracle that able to exist and without STAR data. You know, we took the same test that we were going to take last year. We took it this year instead. And, you know, I'm just hoping this goes to prove to the people in Austin, mostly, that we don't need the data. Teachers were able to teach without the data, and things still worked out. We still scored well. We didn't need these things. And so I'm hoping that a lot of the benefits of this come out. A lot of kids stayed healthy. A lot of kids were able to still get a proper education and still get what they would have had, barring all of the other outside circumstances. The one thing I'm hoping goes away, but it won't, is I believe we're going to see hybrid schools all the time. I believe that's going to be the future of, we're going to offer it here. We're going to maybe hire on another staff member that would be in charge of keeping up with all those things. That's what I personally believe is going to happen. For Tatum, we said if you didn't have a medical necessity, that you had to come back to school. And so out of the 108 kids I teach this year, 1 or 2 I haven't seen since September.
Wow.
And yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the way education's going. And I think homeschooling options and hybrid schools becoming a version of that is going to be the mainstay from here on, which is good because it lowers the pressure on public educators.
Mm-hmm. It definitely felt like, you know, education is kind of going that direction. Like it's kind of inevitable that like online learning will become more and more of a thing. But it seems like this whole situation just rapidly accelerated that whole process. You know, and lots of teachers kind of that were out of the loop on this basically either retired or quit because they could not keep up. And that was the other thing, the technology jump that everybody had to get on top of. Like, what was that like?
Oh man, I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings took an hour longer than they needed to because somebody couldn't get their audio working, or they were talking and it would just be like Mr.
personally attacked right now, but okay.
Please don't. You know, I hope the biggest impact I know for sure is going to happen is next year is the last year they're going to do the STAR test on paper. Everything's going to go online now. And wow. I don't know if all the data from that, but the entire TEA website crashed. it crashed completely. Like the kids weren't able to take the STAR test. Kids started the STAR test 4 hours later than everybody else doing it in paper. So, I mean, not only is the teaching some of the older teachers how to work different things, we've got to work the mainstream of how we get the information. And so that's going to be a government. So this year was a trial run for a lot of the nightmares we're going to have the 2 years from now. So the kids were fine. You know, they did well on all this stuff, and I did fine. And most of the people did. We really stress technology involvement at Tatum. So it wasn't horrible, but it was still a learning curve for the older generation.
Oh, it seemed like a giant wake-up call for the entire industry. You know, it's like you either keep up or you're going to be lost.
That is very true. I mean, going off of that, so my mom's also a teacher in the field. So she had difficulty because, I mean, let's be honest, she's not the best with computers. But I mean, you know, like you said, there's a lot of teachers that aren't. Luckily, she has a teacher that's around my age that kind of helps her out and is like, hey, I'll get you going. So they honestly have a good relationship. They help each other out. But it's like there's a lot of teachers that don't have that and just kind of are like lost in the dark and don't know what to do. So yeah, my mom told me there was like some teachers that were having a really tough time during all that. It kind of sucked.
And I think a lot of people underestimated the impact that COVID was having on schools, especially in the beginning. They're like, oh, well, they'll just teach from home and then, you know, good to go. But it just seemed like they didn't think about the bigger picture of like, okay, now that we're at home and, you know, kids are barely showing up or they're not finishing their assignments or X, Y, or Z reason, it's like all these things are happening. It's like, how are we going to get back to what we were doing before in the efficiency and the routines that we built? And like, how do we get back to that? Will we ever get back to that? Like, did you ever have those kinds of thoughts?
Oh, I mean, it's the interconnectivity of being a teacher with a kid in a class cannot be replaced with a computer screen. It never will be able to. I mean, the people on the Hill, administration and educators and politicians who pretend to be educators in Austin, don't understand what goes on in a day-to-day classroom. We will get back. We will. Mm-hmm. And this will not last forever, obviously. Right. I mean, we've already seen a massive downtick in deaths, positive cases. We're on the path to returning. There will be growing pains, but we'll get back to what we were originally. Kids are kids. They don't change. Yeah. It's really us that have to change.
Yeah, it's a mentality thing. You gotta channel that kind of thought process.
Oh, 100%. Because if you don't, I mean, that's been the hardest part for people. They're like, well, you know, because we do asynchronous. We're not teaching at the same time as the lecture on. I have a Google Classroom. I put my notes. I've recorded myself. I've lost time with my family because I've had to stay up and record my notes, my PowerPoints, my lectures.
Yeah.
And like, I've got a 8-month-old son who's crawling around on the ground pooping his pants, and I have to talk about San Jacinto.
We've all been there.
We've all been there.
Some of us are in it right now.
Right. Yeah. As we speak, somebody is pooping their pants and talking about San Jacinto.
Exactly.
Right. Like peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Well, we appreciate, Hunter, you sharing all that information with us, because I know there's a lot of people out there that have kind of just blown by this last year and not had a chance to really think about or don't really know anybody in the education space, and haven't really been able to hear that perspective. And we appreciate you bringing that in. And I mean, like we mentioned earlier, we all have that perspective around our households, so we kind of have an idea. But I'm really glad you shared that, because there's a lot of people out there that have no clue of what teachers have been through this last year. And hopefully things do get better, like we were mentioning. But yeah, that's just it's such a big thing. And for those who are watching, if you know a teacher, tell them that you love them and you appreciate what they're doing, because it has been a wild experience for them. So yeah, that's all I have on that. Do y'all want to jump into some of the more fun stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to jump into our next segment, which is movies and TV. So we're going to get into the entertainment side of the podcast. And starting off today will be Hunter as he tells us about a movie or TV show that we're going to talk about. So go ahead.
So a movie that I watched in high school and the movie I'm going to tell you all about now is Stranger Than Fiction. It is a 2003-2004 movie starring Will Ferrell. It's a movie basically where there's this very OCD, very particular with how he does everything, brushes his 33 teeth 72 times in one, and then he starts realizing in the middle of the narrator talking about his life that he can hear the narrator. And he comes to find out that he is actually a character in a person's book.
Mm.
It's like the Truman Show, except he finds out that he's going to die and that the author of the book is notorious for killing off her characters. And so Will Ferrell's character goes on this entire life-changing process of being who he really is. He works in the IRS. He does the same thing every day, and he changes his life completely because he basically finds out, hey, I'm going to die. I might as well do something about it and make a lot of memories before I go if it's inevitable.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, such a meta concept. And I love movies that are self-aware, or like the characters are self-aware what's going on. But yeah, like I've definitely heard of that movie. I think I've watched it. Part of me thinks I have and I haven't. But as you remind me of that concept, I definitely want to go back and see it.
And it's the thing about it is we all love Will Ferrell's comedy because boy, the dude is hilarious. He's phenomenal in a serious role. This is one of the first serious roles I'd ever seen him in. And I really can't think of another movie where he's been kind of like that, but he was so believable. He was still lovable. He was still hilarious, but I really felt for him. And me and my wife now have watched it twice in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I watched it in high school and it had a profound effect on me. And even she watches it and she will cry and I'll start tearing up because it's really a beautiful thing. And it stars it's a powerhouse cast. It has Will Ferrell, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Emma Thompson, Queen Latifah. There's a lot of great characters in the movie. Without giving too much away if you're going to rewatch it, the ending is perfectly, and Matt Hoffman. Did I say Matt Hoffman? Is that the bike guy?
David Hasselhoff, I think, maybe.
David Hasselhoff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll go with that.
Yeah,
anyway,
talking about the BMX guy, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's somewhere in there, but it's just a perfectly cast movie with the right actors in it. And yeah, it's like the Truman Show. These meta ideas of finding out that one, my life is destined, or if it's what we're going to talk about in our podcast about predestination, free will and that kind of stuff with it as well. But I'll talk about that and I'll save that for our show.
Nice. Lane, have you seen this movie?
I have, yeah, and it is very similar to Truman Show. I think the big difference is, like you said, he finds it out early on, whereas the whole concept of Truman Show was him trying to figure that out, and when he did, it was kind of like, oh, well, that's the zinger. Yeah, because I think that's the meme of Will Ferrell where he's drinking the wine and crying on the sofa, and
I watched that the other night. That's Get Hard.
Get Hard. That's right. Okay.
Oh.
It's funny because I think someone put that within that movie, and I was like, that can make sense in that movie too because
it would
existential. So
that scene came on my screen, and I was like, oh, where I've seen it.
Movie?
I'm wondering. I was like, I knew it was either that one or that movie, and it's funny because a lot of people forget about that movie that Will Ferrell did. I did too, honestly, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this, and so I watched it one night, and I was like, yeah, this is a lot. Like a lot of people, like you said, take Will Ferrell for granted, and like he's a comedian, but like his dramas are, man, he could do that just as well too. And
absolutely,
that's what makes him a good actor, arguably.
Well, it's one of his earlier movies, kind of coming out of SNL, and not everybody didn't really know how to react to him being in movies. And like, I'm not sure, was this pre or post Elf? because
Yeah, I was about to ask that because
Let me
it's
check.
funny to
part of me thinks it's
around that.
before, because Elf is what kind of really blew him up as a movie actor, and I feel
Yeah.
like this was one of his first out of SNL movies.
It's post Elf. This was
Oh.
actually 2006. Elf came out in 2003.
Oh, okay.
I
He
mean,
was
that's
kind-
still crazy for him to turn around and do Elf and then do this movie. Like, that's,
Okay, so that's what it was then.
that's
So
pretty crazy.
if you were a fan of Elf, you went to go watch this, and you're like, wait a minute, this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
that
Step
might be
Brothers.
why it didn't get as much attention, to be honest.
Yeah. Right. I imagine. So where can people find that movie? Or
I think it was on HBO Max for a little while. It may have been, but I can't find it anywhere else. I went to Books a Million and traded in a bunch of old stuff I had, and I saw it on Blu-ray and immediately bought it. So
oh well, that's the old school way. Just go find it out there. Yeah.
miserable
copy.
movie. It's awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, Lane, you're up next. What do you have for movies and TV?
Well, I'm gonna go with TV since we already did the movie.
All right.
And my TV show is actually Nathan for You. This it kind of had a resurgence because it was also from the early 2000s. Because I think the last season ended like mid 2000s.
Wow.
Essentially, so for people that like the Impractical Jokers movie and Bad Grandpa movie, also the most recent movie with Eric Andre, Bad Trip, which is basically it's like a mix of staged humor mixed with like genuine people's reactions of pranks or whatever's going on, they're actually genuinely reacting to. He claims he's a small business owner and he's helping businesses out, quote unquote, but he comes with the most terrible ideas, but
Yeah.
it's hilarious the way he delivers it to him. He's like, you know what? So for instance, this doesn't really ruin anything because this is early on. He goes to a pizza place and he's like, to promote pizza sales, he's like, we're going to say if we are 10 minutes late on your delivery, we're going to give you a free pizza. He's like, the thing is, you're always going to be late, right? And the guy was kind of like, okay. He's like, but the free pizza is going to be this big.
Yeah.
The guy's like, so he's not lying. It is a free pizza, but it's an inch big. So it's like, what? And so he goes and he pitches the idea. He actually goes out and does this stuff with like one of the other pizza delivery drivers. He's like, all right, so we're going to give him the pizza. And one guy like laughed in his face. Like, I don't want that. And he's like, how did he take it? He's like, he laughed and said he didn't want it, as anyone who would react.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, I'm going to go try it out. And so he's like, let me borrow your shirt. And he puts on the guy's shirt and he's like, all right, I'm going to go up and try it out. He gets rejected again. He's like, I don't understand. Why do people not want free pizza?
Well, it was funny seeing the people's reactions. Like some people like didn't know what to think of it, and then
Right.
they laughed and like, okay, yeah, whatever. Some people were like super confused, and then some people got like really mad and pissed off. It's like,
Yeah.
that was so
So you
funny.
see like genuine human reactions, like people are gonna laugh, get mad, cry, or like whatever,
Yeah.
everything in between. And that's the most hilarious part because it's just like, how bizarre is this? Like, it
Yeah,
makes me mad because I'm like, I wish I had thought of this concept. Like, gosh, this dude.
yeah, it's a brilliant idea.
I know. I'm like, God, I could have done that easily.
I've seen like the first 2 episodes, and so far I'm blown away. I didn't realize it was that old.
Oh, I didn't either. I don't know where it's like. I randomly came across the TikTok, and I was like, what? I was like, so TikTok does have its good sides, and I was like, oh, okay, Nathan, for you, I'll check this out.
I was laughing so hard when they did the interview episodes where they basically feed him things to say to the people, and
Yeah.
I just the reactions of the people are just priceless. It's like how what do you do to that? It's like what do you even say?
Who would actually say that in a real interview? It's like, what? Like the one with what's his name that voices Archer and Bob's Burgers. Yes, yeah. He was one of them, and he was like asking the most bizarre questions, and the interviewer's like, you can tell they're taken aback. They're like,
Yeah, and that was like in Practical Jokers kind of style where like they just feed you say, but it seems like the rest of the show is kind of more just kind of him just doing silly things and coming up with weird ideas. So there's
Yeah,
somewhat of
kinda
a
more
story
realistic.
to it a little bit.
Right. Whereas like, yeah, Bad Grandpa, same thing, is kind of more scripted, but
Hmm.
I mean, either way, it's hilarious. So I mean,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it could be scripted. You just never know. But the way they execute it, it's completely, up in the air. You couldn't really tell if it was.
right, right. Because Danielle was asking me, "Is this real or not?" I was like, "That's the beauty of it. Who knows what is real or not?" I like how they blur that line because it's like it's not obvious, so obvious that's like, oh, that's obviously fake. It's like,
Yeah.
is that real? Is that actually? It makes you question everything about reality. It's funny. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I'll go ahead and jump into mine, and I'm talking about a movie that nobody's probably heard of because it came out around this time last year. It was supposed to hit theaters, but it went straight to streaming, and other people picked it up. It's a movie called Save Yourselves. So Save Yourselves is just a kind of a quick pitch, and I'm definitely not going to give any major spoilers away. I will let you know the hook of the story just to kind of like get you interested because you both definitely need to see this. It's a very unique film. It's a sci-fi comedy mixed in with a little bit of horror. So basically the premise is there's this couple, right? Boyfriend or girlfriend. It's the actors are Sunita Mani and John Reynolds. They're like unknown actors, but they play this couple. And it was directed by Alex Houston Fisher and Eleanor Wilson. Like I said, lesser known names, but apparently this was in a few film festivals, so it had a little bit of recognition and things like that. But anyway, basically the premise of the story is you have this couple, and it's kind of a commentary on the idea of technology kind of overtaking society and the social interactions that we have every day, especially within this couple. Like they're always on their phones, they're always connected to something, and they decide to take an entire week of vacation to this. And they're located in New York. They go to upstate New York in the wooded areas in this cabin that a friend of theirs was going to let them rent out for the week. And basically they decided we're going to disconnect from all technology, and we're going to go stay up in this cabin for a week so we can kind of grow our relationship. We can learn to live without our phones and being all constantly connected, because it's getting in between their relationship and other things like that. And so they decide to stay out in this cabin, right, with no communication. And here's the hook. So while they're in this cabin, they start to see these little poofy ball things showing up at random times. They don't know what it is, but it's like this little poof, and it's an alien. And so basically, they are living in this cabin during an alien invasion and have no connectivity to the real world. They have no ideas what's going on, but they are facing this situation head on, isolated in this cabin during an alien invasion. And like I said, the actual aliens themselves are these little what they call poofs.
Yeah.
Literally that. And the situations and the things that happen, it gets crazy, it goes nuts. But like you would just like you have not like going into the movie, like I knew a little bit about what was happening, but like as you get through it, you're like, wow, this is wild. Like I would have never suspected this movie to go this direction. But it's such a fun movie. The actors are great. The story is really fun. Like I said, I really don't want to give anything away, but my question to you guys is: have you heard of it? Do you want to check it out? And what do you think about it?
Well, you got me sold. I mean, I think I've heard of it. I mean, when I looked it up on my phone just to kind of like not spoiler anything, just see if I knew anybody, and I do see the poster for it. I was like, I think that came out.
Yeah,
I mean,
it flew under everybody's radar because, like I said, it wasn't going to be a giant movie in the first place. That's why they just kind of put it straight to streaming. But it's kind of like resurfaced now after it's been out this time. And I had seen it, like I'd seen the trailer a year ago when it was coming out, and I was like, well, I got to watch that, and just never got to it, and finally did almost a year later, and I was so glad that I did.
It seems like my kind of movie. It's like being on the outside of an inside joke.
Yes. It's one of those movies where, like, if because the reason I fell back to it, and I was like, okay, I don't want to watch a franchise movie. I don't want to watch a sequel to another movie. It's like, what's something quirky and unique that I can watch and have a good time? And I was like, oh yeah, there's that one movie that I've been meaning to watch, and it was like perfect, for what I was looking for. What about you, Lane?
Yeah, I think I'm scared to watch it because that could actually happen in real life soon. So that's
yeah, there's proof out there, so there's no telling.
Hey, listen, Elon is already on Earth. We've already been invaded. It's all good.
Okay, you're right. Well, then, yeah, there's nothing to lose at this point, right?
Yeah.
No, actually, yeah, that sounds funny because it's like, because I think people in their minds, aliens are like, it's going to be a big, creepy, scary figure. So it's ironic that it's the complete opposite. It's just like, oh,
yeah, they thought it was like a piece of furniture at first.
Like, oh, okay, cool.
They're like, is that an ottoman? What was that? What is that?
Yeah. Like, what? Yeah. So I mean, that's actually a funny concept because it's like not what people think at all when they think aliens. They're like, oh, oh, okay.
Well, as I was watching it, all I could think of was you and Danielle being on that cruise right as the pandemic was starting, and like y'all coming back and be like, what's going on?
What's going on? Yeah, that literally is what happened to us. And we're just like, oh, wait, what? Because we had no contact with anyone I couldn't even text you or anyone for a week. Like, my signal was so bad. And so we got back and we're like, wait, what's going on?
But the movie definitely plays with that idea of like, what if you got caught up in something like a apocalyptic event and you had no connection with anybody, and it's just like you have to figure this, like you don't know how to defeat it, you don't know how to deal with it, you don't know what it is, like to even know that there's even an invasion happening, and like you just think about all these different situations, and they address a lot of it, and it's just such a great movie, and the ending is just like you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it, and that's all I'm gonna say. So
I love old classics.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's just a smart movie. Like I said, it's gonna be one of those movies that either you could just kind of stumble upon it, or it's gonna kind of be from word of mouth. But definitely check it out. I think you can stream it on iTunes. Do what?
It's on Hulu.
Yeah, it's on Hulu, iTunes. So the way we watched it was Alamo on demand. So Alamo Drafthouse put out and that's actually where I found it the first time last year, when they put out this kind of rental service that you can go on there and rent movies. But if you want to support Alamo Drafthouse, go watch it on alamoondemand.com. It's like $5 or $6 to rent. It's a great watch. If you don't want to watch it there, you can watch it on iTunes, Hulu, Amazon, things like that. But yeah, if you haven't watched Save Yourselves, go save yourself and watch it.
There you go.
All right. Well, let's move on to the music section. So the music segment will be us talking about an album or a song that we've either loved listening to recently or something we're kind of reminiscing on. And today, Hunter's going to get us started here. What album or song are you going to talk about today?
I am going to talk about, it's the most hyped release this last week in the hip hop world. J. Cole came out with The Off Season, and it just blew my mind. But it was, unless Kendrick Lamar comes out and releases an album this year, I'm penciling it in as my album of the year. I think it's that good.
Wow.
And y'all know, we were all in a rock band in high school and parts of college. That's more normally my forte. But man, when you see something good, you don't care. The Off Season, it's J. Cole's 6th album. He's been known the last couple of years. The last 2 albums he's done, KOD and 2014 Forced Drive, they've been completely featureless. He's done everything by himself. and he's gone double, triple platinum on both albums. And he gained a lot of hype with being himself, being a very educated rapper, being very just clever is just the way I have to describe it. He's not like, I work with kids all the time, so I listen to everything they listen to, and they think it's boring because it's not their guy. I don't care what anyone says. This guy, J. Cole, is clever with his wordplay. He's intelligent. He's a college educated guy. This album is awesome. When he released it, I was listening to his documentary about it called Applying Pressure. It's 12 minutes on YouTube. He goes, I'm about to have a kid. He says, I'm about to go into like the next stage. The fall off is what he calls it. He says, have I written my best song yet? He said, hell no. And so he started writing the off season right then and there. He's like, do I want to look back on this time and be like, I wasted my career? He's like, no, I'm going to make the album I've always wanted to make. And it just flows. It just continues on. It's 39 minutes, 8 seconds. And I don't know if I can listen to one song without listening to every one of them in context. That's how good I think it is. And he actually has features on this album, which blew my mind. Some of the more common guys today, 21 Savage, and people like that. I would recommend it to a T, even if you're not a hip hop fan. My wife doesn't like hip hop, and we were listening to it in our trip in Dallas last week, and she's like, that's good. And if she likes it, it can't be just a flashing.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with, like, I know the name, but I couldn't name one song. But it sounds like to me that it's just like good music, and I respect good music. I'll give anything a chance if it's like the cutting edge, or if it's like very unique from a lot of other things in the genre. So it definitely sounds like it's something special. Who would you kind of compare him to?
That's the thing. It's so hard to compare him to anybody because he's not a braggadocious. He's not this over the top persona. He's very quiet. I mean, the song that made him really famous, oh my goodness, it was what is it called? Anyway, first thing he says on one of his songs is, first things first, rest in peace, Uncle Phil, for real, you're the only father that I ever knew. It's like stuff like that. I'm like, oh.
I think we can all relate to that. That's just good.
I could have gone on, but if I was comparing him to anybody that I like, he's on par with like Kendrick Lamar, in my opinion. And unless Kendrick Lamar releases an album this year, J. Cole's album of the year. And they have been in the talks of co-writing an album the last couple months. And if that does, there will never be another hip hop song I'll listen to, because I'll just listen to that thing on replay for the rest of my life, because I know it'll be a banger. It'll make me think. It'll make me cry. And I'll be working out. No, I won't. I'll be driving my little truck to talk to kids about the Alamo in San Jacinto while bumping the most gangster of hip hop.
I think J. Cole's actually at the Alamo.
Really?
He's pretty woke like that.
He might be.
Isn't that what the kids say? I don't know. I'm just trying to fit in here.
No, they just say shit.
Oh my god.
That's all they say.
We had to fit it in.
Somehow.
Perfect.
But it's you can find it on anything you listen to, Apple, iTunes, Spotify. I'd give it a hard listen. I'd give it a good listen. If I'm going to pick 3 songs out of it that if you just wanted to fly by and listen to it real quick, My Life is the third out song on it. It's the one that got me going originally. Pride is the Devil is a really interesting song. And then he released this about 3 or 4 months ago called The Climb Back. And it's just been constantly on my radar, on my Spotify. It's always something. Yeah.
There it is.
That's the top 3 right there. My Life is number 1.
It's dude, it is good.
Okay. I got it liked. I'll take a listen.
All right.
But yeah, I think good music, like you said, it doesn't have any genre or boundaries. Good musicians recognize good music. So
yeah, that's what I'm constantly looking for. Like, if you show me something, I'd rather you not tell me what it sounds like. I'd rather just kind of take it in on my own, and then I kind of figure out for myself what I think it is, which could be different from somebody else's interpretation. But I like to approach, whatever it might be, with the open idea of like, okay, I don't know what kind of style this is, but if they're saying it's good music, then I'm going to give it a chance. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that you just like, you hear the first 5 seconds, you're like, nope, not happening. Sorry. And I typically give any song up until their first chorus. Like if I hear a song and I'm hooked by the first chorus, then you've done your job. But like if you can't get me hooked in before that chorus gets in there, then it's going to be tough for me to get through it. But that's just kind of my approach. I like to give the song a chance, and if you can't get me after that first chorus, then I'm probably not gonna get a lot of rest, because that's an important section to pay attention to when you're writing something. But
absolutely, but that's all I got to say about it. Go give it a listen. Go give it and see what you think.
All right, definitely. Okay, Lane, you're up. What you got?
All right, so we're going to take kind of a 180. This is actually from Silverstein. Their tour posters in the background. Silverstein released a single called "Bankrupt," which is very fresh and new. Again, Silverstein, y'all both know they've been around since late '90s, early 2000s. They've just aged like fine wine. I mean, they keep writing great music. They're from Canada. Danielle's born in Canada. It's all adding up. I love Canada. Talk about Canada.
We're not right?
Yeah, right. No, yeah, we're done. I'm gonna watch a hockey game after this, but anyway.
Hey, awesome.
Hey, yeah, no, the Stars might be playing, so there you go. Yeah, no, so it's just a great song. I mean, it is just like, it's just straight rock and roll. I mean, they got kind of heavy on this one. It's very intense. I mean, to the point where literally the breakdown right in the middle of it, all he needed to scream was the F-bomb. And I was like, you know what? At this point, that makes sense. I mean, sometimes you just got to throw your hands up and just yell that, because that's, sometimes life can be, especially during these times, like, very stressful. So it's like, you just want to.
It was, it's definitely like a feeling that a lot of people probably feel right now is bankrupt, in a metaphorical way. And that's what I kind of felt from that song, was just like all of this bottled up emotion that everybody has been feeling this past year. And they just kind of took that and threw it into like a very heavy song that they have never like written anything like this before, but like expressed it all so well. Like that was the kicker for me.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I never really listened to Silverstein, and I mean, I haven't heard this song. I'm looking forward to it. But the first time I'd ever heard of Silverstein was, do y'all remember, and this was a video on YouTube a few years ago, of the guy who auditioned for American Idol with a Silverstein song?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, actually, I did see that. Yeah.
You gotta watch this video. He's like screaming, but he's like doing like the inhale, like he sounds like a pterodactyl the whole time.
Yeah, he's not doing it right at all.
No. And
that's
then
perfect.
It's a accent like it's so funny. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna listen to Silverstein, and here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they've come a long way. I mean, their first album was great, of course, but I mean, they just, like I said, they've constantly just ramped up, and they're like, you want to, like, if you compare their first album to this latest release, you'd be like, wow, they've come a long way.
Yeah, they seem to not be able to write a bad song. Like that's their biggest thing, is like, if they couldn't write a bad song or they tried. That in over 20 years of being a band, they just hit after hit after hit as far as like the albums go. Like they've created such a unique experience with their music that is almost timeless. Like, sure, you can go back and listen to some of their older music and you're like, yeah, that really sounds like the early 2000s, or that sounds like the late 2000s or early 2010s. But like, you go back and you listen to it and it still holds up. Like, it may feel like a certain era, but when you revisit it, it sounds just as relevant today as it did back then. That's the biggest thing about Silverstein and that I've noticed. And like you said, they age like fine wine, their music.
Yeah, and two, I think they kind of were same with like J. Cole, like Hunter was saying, they kind of were under the radar because at the time also you got to think about the bands that were going against was like, you know, Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance. Everyone in that genre was, I mean, elite. Not to say they weren't, they just were competing with really good rock bands during that time.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of part of the reason why they went under the radar. But now recently, you know, since those bands have, well, no, I mean, Fall Out Boy still going, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now they're kind of have emerged to a point where it's like, okay, we don't, there's not a lot of people going against us now. So, and they've kind of broken the glass ceiling in their genre, so to speak. So, I mean, yeah. So now they're just coming out with, I mean, hits left and right. Same with kind of like bands like Beartooth too. A lot of those bands that they were kind of under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, yeah, they built such a loyal and gigantic following in the 2000s, and like while they were still considered like underground, you know, music, and it hasn't been until like this last decade that they just blew up, you know, within the genre or even rock music. Like more and more people are finding out about Silverstein 10 years after they've been making music. And so like they just keep piling on more and more fans. Like you have the original fans from back in the day, then you have all the new fans that have just kind of hopped aboard in the last decade. And then especially with this new song, because it's like nothing they've ever written, and they're able to write fresh new ideas that are also up with the times. Like they like you could go through their whole like album catalog and be like, well, that sounds like Silverstein in the 2000s. That sounds like Silverstein, you know, Silverstein in this era, and the things that you pinpoint of it are things that were iconic to the genre at the time. So they're always innovating and creating new things that catch on and that are used in so many other bands, and you know, that are influenced by it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think like you're saying, like with bands like this that have loyal fan bases that start out small and grow big, I think it's because they're so passionate about these bands that and they know it's good music when they share it with people. Like when I share it, for instance, with Danielle or members of my family and friends, they don't know them, but they know I'm passionate about it, and they see that passion, and it's kind of like, wow, they really like this band. Like I'm gonna give them a listen. So when they see me liking them like that, they take a liking to it like that, and I think that's how it spreads. Honestly, like amongst everyone, because they're like, wow, this is really good music that's not mainstream, and it's not, you know, the crap that, you know, pumped out, you know, every, you know, however often like most artists do, which is kind of sad. Like it's not fast food music. It's like
There you go.
music. Yeah. Yeah. So that's all to say about that.
Alrighty, now we'll move over to me, and I'll talk about the music that I've got for us. So today we are going to talk about Z2 from The Devil Wears Prada. So for those who are not familiar, The Devil Wears Prada is a metalcore band that was started around the mid 2000s, and they have just been pumping out so many great albums year after year. And recently they just released a sequel to an EP that came out in 2010 that was called the Zombie EP. And so basically, for those who aren't familiar, Devil Wears Prada has put out a couple of what they would call like a themed EP. They've done zombies, they've done space, and for this one, they put it out. They actually wrote and recorded the entire thing over the last year during quarantine. And I mean, who knew it would have taken a pandemic for us to get another zombie EP? But the irony is heavy in this situation. So, and it's just such an appropriate album for the times that we've been in. But yeah, Z2, the Zombie EP sequel, it's got 5 songs on it, 5 amazing songs. Like they really, they took the time and they thought about what would be a great follow-up, and this is what it is. And this is it, basically. Just to kind of name the songs here, we've got Nightfall, Forlorn, Termination, Nora, and Contagion. So right off the bat, you hear those titles and you think zombie apocalypse, which is exactly what they were going for. So yeah, my favorite songs right off the bat were definitely the first 2, Nightfall and Forlorn. Like, just from what I know about Devil Wears Prada and all their past albums, what they kind of did with this, not only created a sequel of an album that we've heard before in a similar style, took that and evolved it into what kind of band they are now, which is really cool because when Zombies came out, it was kind of a transitional album between Roots Above and the Dead Throne album. And it kind of showed you that transition. This album was kind of taking a little bit of that, a piece of what they did before, and then a little piece of what they recently did with their album called The Act, which came out in 2019, and mashed it up into what we have here, which is Z2. So, have you guys heard about it? Have you listened to it? And what are your thoughts?
Lane, you can take the start here, man. I'll go and say.
Okay, yeah, I was like, I know you have a lot to say. Well, I don't have as much to say because I haven't listened to it. But well, hear me out. It's been a long weekend.
Shame.
It's been a long weekend, I know. But what I'm prepared to do and what's actually going to happen after this is I'm going to sit down and listen to it. I'm not going to sit down. I'm going to listen to it and knock out some, dishes, laundry, etc. So I think that's going to pump start the chores going on because I am really excited. I saw it and it's been in the back of my mind the last few days, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta listen to this, And I knew we were going to talk about it, so I was like, yeah. So I'm getting more hyped about it because I'm like, ooh, it's like
it was super hyped. I mean, every album they put out is always super hyped. It's such an event. Like it's not like, I mean, they put out albums often, but when it happens, it's a big deal. It reminds me of like when Under Oath puts out something, or even Silverstein. It's such an event, and it's not just like a throwaway fast food album. They put the time and effort into it, and it shows big time.
Right. Yeah. So again, I'm excited. I'm literally going to listen to it after this. Like I'm gonna.
Here's a thought. What if you listen to Zombie EP1 and then went straight into Zombie EP2? Is that the best experience you can get from that?
Honestly, yes.
I just thought of that right then and there.
Okay, so I might go back to Zombies, because
that might be the ideal listening experience is hearing both kind of blend into each other, because it tells a story. It tells a story about zombies and what that would be like, and they paint a really good picture lyrically, and then obviously emotionally through the instrumental. But like, I'm really curious. I think I'm going to do that on my own too. Just crank them both.
Might do it at the same time, yeah. I
mean, but don't play them both at the same time, because then it's all going to feel distorted. You want to play the first one and then the second one.
I'm going to go one more than you got with it. I'm going to listen to Zombie 1, Zombie 2, while I'm running my Zombie Run app.
Oh, there you go.
Exercise is not. I'll just listen to it. No.
So, Lane, have you heard any of the singles? Do you have any idea what this album sounds like, or do you have an idea what it sounds like?
No, I don't, and I think I did that purposely because I know I just want to be totally submerged into it and have no clue what's going on. Even though now I know it's probably gonna be similar to the Zombie EP, which I kind of figured. The only thing that I know about this album, I saw the artwork, so I was like, okay, it seems similar to Zombie, and then of course I was like, okay, that makes sense, the sequel to it. So
I will say it has a lot of what the first one that you loved about it, like the difference between that EP and all the other albums, just like the Zombie EP itself. It was written in such a different way that they've ever written music before. It's very fast paced, very technical, and very heavy. So I will tell you that this album gives you a lot of that and more.
Okay. I'm excited.
Is that your final offer? Final answer.
Final answer. I mean, yeah. Now, Hunter, you have the floor. Here we go.
Last night we were all texting. I was like, I know I got to talk about this. And then my wife was like, you got to talk about J. Cole. I was like, well, we're going to talk about Zombie at some point, so I'm cool with that.
Right.
Reese described it perfectly. It reminds you of why Zombie was so good, but it's not like they pulled Zombie up, wiped it clean, and wrote a 2 over it and gave you the same thing. It is an evolution of how incredible this album was. I was a huge fan of Zombie when it came out. The first one, I could listen to it today with no hesitation, listen to the whole thing all the way through. As the years have gone on, I love Dead Throne. I didn't really, and this might be it. I didn't really care for Space. I didn't really care for Transit Blues, 818. I didn't really care for those albums. That's when I kind of fell off the Devil Wears Prada. But then I heard The Act, and I heard, Numb and Chemical, and I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, they teased Z2, and I was like, okay. And then the trailer came out, Upset the Sickness. I was like, oh, this is gonna be good. And they didn't disappoint. They went right back to what you loved about Z, the riffage, the guttural, it says it's like a best of. Everything I like. There's parts that reminded me of Plagues.
Yeah. That was the other thing. There was little nuggets and Easter eggs from like all the albums. Like there's some songs in there that I was like, that sounds like a song off of Roots Above. And then like you said, there's some parts that sound like Plagues. Like, and I wasn't even thinking like what this would sound like. I would just hear the moment and I'd be like, that took me back. Because I just like felt I was listening to one of those albums in a good way, not like a copy and paste kind of way, but like they reimagined some of these ideas that you've heard before. And you're like, I didn't know that they could strike gold twice.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on about it, but I mean, you just gotta listen to it. My favorite song, of course, I love the two teaser songs, Termination and Nightfall, but Nora's my favorite. The riffage is just, it reminded me of Anatomy. Just that first dun 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 dun, that kind of intro. It has that same kind of riffage going into it. You still got all the good cleans and the heavy just triplet breakdowns. It's just like, I'm like, where's Heights of Eden? I've got to play a song.
Well, that's the crazy thing though, as well, is that this EP being 10 years after the first one came out, you also have to remember that the first album came out with a completely different, well, not completely different, but like a majority of different members.
Yeah.
Like the original members did the first album or the first EP, and then this new EP has about but everybody but two people are the original or are new to the original people. So the only two original people left is Jeremy, the guitarist and clean vocalist, and Mike, the screamer. So everything else is a new musician, new ideas, and new styles that I feel complemented the band so well, and is a part of the reason why they've had such a longevity as a band, is because they've been able to evolve not only over each album, but bringing in new musicians and new ideas has really benefited them. And I know you said you kind of fell off towards some of the more recent albums. For me, the album 818 like sparked my my interest even more into what they were doing because of how raw it was, and it was the last album that they did before the members started leaving. But like to me, that was like their second wave of excitement for them. And yeah, some of the newer stuff have been hit and miss, but I will say that this is like, if you have been a fan before, for those who are watching, if you've been a fan of Delaware Sparta before and you haven't listened to them recently, this is going to bring you back on board, just like it did with Hunter.
Yep, 100%.
So yeah, go check out Z2 by the Delaware Sparta. And if you're feeling really courageous, listen to Zombie and then Z2. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's great music.
If you were going to write an album, like an EP, a 5-song EP about something just specific, what would it be? I want to think about that.
Oh, like a concept or
like a concept album, like 5-song EP. What would your theme be for it?
Okay.
Let's ponder for a moment.
Well, I know from I've seen interviews and articles, they've joked about possibly doing like a pirate themed one, and then they even like a Wild West one. It would be so cool, but I don't know if they're actually going to do it. They might make a second space EP before they do another themed one, but based on their pattern of releases, like we're going to see another EP in the future. And I'd be interested to seeing those two joke ideas. You know.
I'd buy it in a heartbeat. I mean, like I said, it brought me back to loving them so much. If I was going to write a 5 EP album, I think I'd write about 5 different styles of hot dogs.
Okay.
Like, have you
actually?
What would that even sound like?
That's weird. I was thinking about food.
It would sound like heaven.
Well, you got Chicago style, American.
Not what a hot dog's made out of. It's pretty gross.
Okay, well, if we're gonna stick on food, then I'm doing an EP on pizza, and we're gonna have each song. It's gonna be based on a different kind of pizza, and the worst song on the album will be the Chicago deep dish pizza because that's the worst pizza ever created.
They're so hyped up.
Okay, well then I'm gonna do sushi because I love sushi. And then wasabi will be kind of the firecracker song of the album. It'll be really quick, fast paced. It's gonna be intense, in your face. So,
and if there's like an overall theme of mine, like if there's somebody like singing in the background, it's gonna be like, "Hot dogs are sandwiches." That's it. And then it would be like, if there was a fall off, you didn't know, you didn't believe in yourself, it'd be like a Subway sandwich is built the same way, and it's a same. I don't know. That's where I would go. With
Yeah, taco is the same
I
way.
like it.
Oh, amazing. I'm hungry, guys.
I know.
Apparently,
like,
yeah, you kind of made us hungry here talking about
I'm
food.
also hungry. I'm like, why'd you do that to me?
I mean, dude, I'm tired. I just got, before we hopped on, I got done putting in a new dishwasher. I'm starving.
Yeah, all I've had today is a pack of beef jerky, a Bang energy drink. So that's what I'm running on.
Oh boy.
Yeah, just don't commit any felonies today now.
No, don't tempt me.
Well, if you listen to the zombie album on a bang, there might actually be a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, I might not want to do that because that could. I have to have a disclaimer as I do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's hop over to our final segment here as we begin to wrap up the show. We're going to jump into what we call the final jam. So what the final jam is basically just taking any random topic that we can come up with or that we feel like can kind of round this episode up that we'd like to talk about before we go. And yeah, Hunter, what's on your mind? Besides food.
It was besides. Man, I am excited that streaming services have slightly started to be something that helps out with the new wave of like technology, man. I love HBO Max. I love it so much that I can watch movies from home. And even if I want to, I can still, like, there's still exclusives to movie theaters, still exclusives. Man, quarantine has been great for streaming services. I mean, can you imagine all the things that have been revitalized? I mean, would Tiger King have even been as popular if it didn't happen?
That's true. That is true. Like I will say there's nothing that beats the theater experience. There's nothing that ever will. And I feel like, as we're coming out of this pandemic, especially this summer, I feel like people will feel comfortable going back into the theaters and it's going to revitalize that entire industry. Because for a while there, we weren't sure where it was going to head, but the streaming services have kept things going and they've done it in a great way. There's been some great strategies, whether that's the on-demand and in-theater hybrid thing, or like you were saying, where HBO Max drops a movie in the theater, and then after it's been in the theater, they have it available immediately, or you can watch it at the same time, something like that. But those different strategies that have kind of come out of this pandemic that were probably never going to be a thing, at least for a while, because I feel like, streaming is obviously the future, and it will be a majority of the market, but like, I like how they haven't counted out theaters completely. I know some people are never going to go back to a theater, and that's fine. But there, like you said, it's been such a great time for streaming and people to access this entertainment.
I mean, and that's something we can talk about for a minute. I mean, like, what are movies that you cannot watch in your home in comparison to a theater experience? I'll tell you right now, it's Interstellar.
Oh yeah, movies like that. Anything Christopher Nolan puts out, if you watch it on an iPad or a phone, you are a dirty person. and he would probably
Yeah, I'm
slap you
saying.
across the face.
You can go on be quarantined, bad opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, go and watch it in theaters, man.
Yeah.
Like, look, I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time this year, and I'm sitting here going, that last like everything flying. If I'd have seen that in movie theaters, like I would have probably checked if I'd been on acid the whole time because that's how incredible it was.
So fun fact, me and our friend Matthew Mobley saw that a few years ago in the theater, and that was the first time that I had seen it. He had seen it at home, but we had watched it in the theater, and that was an amazing experience. That's something I would have never done differently, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I mean, what movie do you think, Lane, would be like one that you're like, this had to have been seen in theaters. I can't watch this in person. I mean, I can watch it in person.
I can't watch it in person. At home.
I can't watch it as a person. I'd be a robot or something. My gosh.
Vicarious. Somebody else's performance of the movie.
Well, mine's not as, it's special to me because when I saw it, well, I'll go ahead and say it was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, because that was a time when, well, if you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2 by now, you probably won't see it. So I'm sorry if I spoil it for anyone, but
spoil away.
And, he has that scene with his dad, and it was right after my dad passed. And when I saw it in the movie theaters, like, this is hitting extra hard. It's a little spicy.
Mm-hmm.
I was also with some of my family, some of my cousins. So that one to me was my favorite movie I've seen, like in the theaters, because it was sentimental. Not to get sentimental on y'all, but I just did. So what are you gonna do about it?
Well, there's also something about it being on the big screen with the big sound and everything that made that whole experience so tangible for you. I feel like if you would have watched that on your phone or on the TV at home or whatever, with all these other distractions around you, you may have not have felt the same way. That's what's so great about that communal experience being in a theater. You're not on your phone, or at least you shouldn't be. And you've got no distraction. Everyone in that room is experiencing something on a giant screen at the same time, and they're all having these moments together. And that's part of the human condition. We need that kind of stuff in our lives. We can't all just watch movies at home. We can't all just go to concerts at home. We have to have that communal experience. And so that's why theaters are so important,
Well, and also I think when you see it like that, and when you go back home and watch it, revisit it, it reminds you of the time you saw it in the big theater. So like, I think that's a big important thing. Another movie for me, going on a side tangent, would be The Greatest Showman. I loved it because also that was one of the first movies Danielle and I saw on a date, and so now I randomly will just go back and re-listen to the whole soundtrack top to bottom, and it's just like I'm reliving it in the big screen because I'm like, I was so submerged, like you said, no phones, no distractions, and yeah, so that'd be another one for me. Musicals and like comedies and action movies, that's my go-to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely changed the landscape, with streaming, into the game, where it's like you can definitely still enjoy certain movies in the theater, and then have that convenience to watch other movies at home. Like, I think that's a great idea because, back in the day, you had to watch every single movie in the theater, and it's like you could have wasted your money on a horrible movie and sat through the entire thing, or left early because you were like, this is not it. And you had that experience, which it's funny to think that that's how it used to be, but now with the streaming, it's all word of mouth and like, it's all ranked on the service. So like, what you're getting basically before you get into it, you don't have to worry about spending a whole lot of money on an experience that you're not going to be happy with. Same thing with the theater. It's like, if I would have saw Avengers, or if I would have seen Avengers Endgame at home, like if that movie would have supposed to have been come out last year and not 2019, I think I would have flipped my lid because that whole end sequence, I really don't want to spoil, but it like that whole movie and that communal experience you've seen the clips of people like cheering in the theater. It's like all that kind of stuff wouldn't have happened if we had to watch that at home, and I may seem like super pro theater, but on one side I am, but on the other side, I'm glad that we have something like the streaming service to kind of the things that you're like, well, I don't have to see that in a theater, then you can check it out at home and still enjoy it. But the big movies, I feel like, are always going to be there, and they're always going to have a theatrical release.
Yeah.
There's just no, like you were saying, the big screen experience, all those things, that no distractions will hook you in.
And last thing I'll say about it is, do y'all know the service Shudder? Have y'all heard of it?
Oh,
So
yes. The horror.
So
app.
so those who don't know, it's like a streaming service just for horror movies, and it's very hit or miss. It's great stuff and garbage. And we're talking about Stream and how it's kind of changed. There's an entire I watched on Shudder called Host, and it is a horror movie film meeting completely through Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Really?
So and it's 54 minutes long. That's exact like how long the original Zoom meetings lasted, and the movie ends when the Zoom ends. And I don't like found footage movies, but if y'all want to get a free like movie to watch, that's the only movie I would tell you. Go use the free time just to watch that, because it's done very well.
It reminds me of that movie that came out a few years ago that was done through Skype.
Unfriended.
Yeah. That was kind of a waste of the time, but it was an interesting concept. Like, I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunities there, but I'm not going to get into it, but similar concept. And that was kind of an interesting way to produce a movie.
Yeah, I'll say I think Host does it right. And if you don't want to watch it, just go watch the Dead Meat show on YouTube, and he does a great breakdown of it. But to steal Lane saying, that's all I got to say about that.
But I mean, at the end of the day, we can all admit that the streaming has definitely changed the game. It's definitely accelerated its importance over the last year. We wouldn't be, probably the same way we are right now mentally if it weren't for that escape from the pandemic and all of the tragedies that have happened over this last year. Like, outside of the pandemic, just everything that's going on, that have that escape still available, whether that's Netflix, Hulu, Disney, HBO, like all this stuff available to us. Like, I just can't imagine, like, all the stuff like you were saying that you were able to hop back into that you had to catch up on, like, it's all there, and it's totally changed the game. So I'm very appreciative of streaming in that way. All right. Well, if that's all we have for that segment, we are going to head on out of here. If you liked what you saw today, make sure that you follow the Random Jam podcast on Facebook, on YouTube, like our videos, subscribe, do all those kinds of things. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching live or on the replay, Hunter, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on the Facebook. You can find my really bad sports takes on Twitter at Coach Liles 56. That's my underscore. This is technically my school account. You can find me those places, Facebook or Twitter. I'm usually there. You can also catch me and my wife's podcast on any service that you have on Spotify, iTunes, Apple, Buzzsprout. We have a podcast called Consuming Media Like a Believer. We take movies and we take film and really anything media, and we break it down from a biblical perspective, and we talk about the connections and the themes in it, and we try to relate it to how it affects our faith and our walk. And we would really enjoy if you'd watch that. And my wife made me say this: you have to also go look at Little Wing Candle Company. It's my wife's candle business. And you can find that on Facebook or Shopify at Little Wing Candle Co.
Awesome. Well, I, for one, enjoyed the conversation today. On behalf of Lane, thank you, everyone who tuned in. And we will see you. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.